So the record is Baptized by the Blaze, and again, we're before the release, but it's already out for our listeners and viewers. It came out on the 23rd, and I know that it is almost always really important to an artist to share where they were creatively when something is created. So, can you take us into the room with you as you're essentially writing this record?
Well, it was kind of written over, a couple of years, but the bulk of it was written when in during the pandemic, and there that was a really probably one of the hardest times of my life because I had been taking a daily prescribed dose of Klonopin, and Klonopin is a benzodiazepine. It's like in the same class of drugs as Xanax. And my doctor had me on a daily dose every single day for 12 years.
Wow.
And for people that don't know, benzodiazepines are highly addictive.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I wasn't getting high on it and I wasn't abusing it, my body could not do without it. And I decided that I didn't want to take it anymore because I was having all kinds of crazy side effects from it and tolerance withdrawals that were terrifying. So I decided to try to taper off of it. And the more and more I tapered off of it and the less and less of that drug was in my body, the sicker I got. And by the end of it, by the night before my album release for the Shallow Graves album, I was in horrible withdrawals. I mean, just excruciating withdrawals. And I was out of my mind. Like it makes you lose your mind. You get real paranoid. And um, so I checked into a treatment facility because I was afraid that I was going to have a stroke or a withdrawal seizure. I checked into that rehab facility the day after my Shallow Graves album release,
Wow.
and it took me. My withdrawals were so bad. I mean, my withdrawals were worse than the people that were coming off heroin and crack that I was in the treatment place with. Um, and I was in like post acute withdrawals for probably another year and a
Wow.
half. I mean, like I've pretty much just now started feeling normal. So during that time, my recovery from Klonopin, I just we were still all having to stay in the house too. So I just started writing, and I wrote "Never Going Back" when I was in those withdrawals. I wrote "Baptized by the Blaze" after I was starting to feel like I was getting on top of it a little bit and feeling better. And um, the the overarching theme for "Baptized by the Blaze" is like where the phoenix builds a giant funeral pyre, and it itself makes a decision to set itself on fire so that it can die and be reborn as a higher version of itself.
Mm.
And I felt like that's what I did whenever I decided to get off that drug and confront my trauma. So that was the story that I felt like I needed to tell.
So I don't have this in my outline, and I don't know why I don't have this question in there. It just occurred to me that as dark as your music is at times, your story always has you as the victor, from what I can tell as a listener. Golly, as someone with self-admitted imposter syndrome, that's got to be so hard to always see yourself winning. Um,
I think it
I don't even know if there's a question there, but
I think it's probably, I mean, that's a really good point. I've actually never noticed that about myself until now, or about my writing until now. And I think part of it is hope. I think that I'm hopeful that I am the victor and that I will be the victor. And I think that it's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's an act of self-love. I think that it's like something in me trying to tell, that little girl that was hiding under the bed scared that she wasn't going to see her mama anymore, trying to tell her that she's going to be all right.
yeah. And it would be so easy from a place of vulnerability as a songwriter to not let yourself win because you get to tell your story within these songs, whatever that story is, whether it's true or not.
Mhm.
And I think it's very telling that you always come out on top. So that's, man, I commend you for that. Seriously.
Thank
But
you.
anyway,
I have a little bit of cockeyed optimism buried in me somewhere, and it drives me crazy. But I'm always there's always hope. You know.
yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about the new record, and one of the things India told me before the episode or before the interview a couple days ago was, "Don't let me not talk about the producer." So here's your chance. Tell us about the producer behind "Baptized by the Blaze."
So Luke Wooten produced this album, and I never in a million years thought that I would get to work with somebody like Luke Wooten. I was doing some demos at my friend Wesley Steed's house. He's a songwriter, and he's more of like a Music Row style songwriter. And I told him that I was looking for a producer, and I had just been rejected by an Americana producer that I really wanted to work with, and he said, you should let me send some of your music to my friend Luke. And I said, Luke who? And he was like, Luke Wooten. And I said, well, who? I mean, who has he produced? And he was like, he pulled up his website and he was like, the Steel Drivers,
Mm-hmm.
Brad Paisley, Dirk Bentley,
Yeah.
Sonny Sweeney, Jim Lauderdale, Dolly Parton.
Yep.
And I was like, that guy is never going to want to work with me. But okay. And so I sent Wes, I made a one sheet and sent it to Wes and forgot about it. And about a week later, Wes texted me and he said, oh my God, Luke says he loves your voice and he wants to meet with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to work with this great producer, this Grammy winning producer. And he was the nicest, most positive producer I think that I've ever worked with. He made the entire experience just a dream. I felt like Cinderella.
So, as a listener and a consumer of music, there are two things from my perspective that you can always tell right off between albums or songs, and that is, you can always tell when an artist is performing a song by a different songwriter. That's the first thing. So, like, if
Mhm.
you're always performing your songs and then you perform somebody else's song, if you listen to a lot of music, it's usually pretty easy to tell that. And the other thing is when you get a new producer. If you have the same producer for all your records, they tend to sound somewhat similar. But then
Yeah.
once you go to a different producer, all bets are off. So what did Luke bring to your sound that was missing prior to his involvement?
I think he brought just like a bigger, crisper sound overall. The album is louder than than my other ones, and I'm proud of all of my albums. And I'm really proud of the ones that Snake Handler and Shallow Graves, that I did with Mark Patasha. But I think the difference was just in like how big it sounds. And I mean, I also like I got to have these like incredibly talented and legendary Nashville studio musicians that have played on Willie Nelson's albums and Reba McEntire's albums. And, once again, like people that I didn't think that I'd be in a room with people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, and they too were just the nicest, most supportive, engaged people. Like they were so happy to be playing, more of a traditional style of country music, and they wanted to know what the songs were about. So that was another thing that Luke brought to the table was this A team of musicians.
Yeah. Sounds like yet another validating experience for you musically. And you need that. You need your cup to be refilled every so often just so you can continue to be creative and be okay with it subconsciously that you are being creative. Because sometimes when you're being creative, your mind will trick you into thinking you're not being productive, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, man, I hate it. Golly, I hate it.